All right, welcome back. So I'm gonna keep working on the greatest metronome in the world. Um, Now there are a lot of other things I kind of my ADHD is probably showing because I have a lot of unfinished series on this channel. MongoDB, I only did one video on hugging faces. I now that one I kind of stopped doing for a reason. I ran out of inference, which you have to pay for. And I tried to set up a home lab as part of my self-managed network series, but I think I need to replace my switch. It's just too crummy of a switch to work with. So it was bringing my network down. So there's a lot of unfinished series. The biggest one I would say is the reading the book AI Engineering. I'm about halfway through the book. Mathematics for machine learning, yeah, forget about it. NVIDIA certifications would be a good one. Yeah, there's a lot of unfinished ones on here, but I don't know. I just want to make this metronome because this is what I think is going to be true in the age of AI. So there's this word ectlung, it's called. It's like Ectulung. And then it's like learning. Let's say learning. But anyways, I learned about it on a Coursera course about learning how to learn. Well, let's get ChatGPT. Hey, there's a word. It's like Ectllung, something like that. But it's like a term associated with learning. Have you ever heard of it?
I think you might be referring to scaffolding. In educational contexts, scaffolding is a method where teachers provide successive levels of temporary support to help students reach higher levels of understanding and skill acquisition.
No, no, that's not it. That's not it.
Got it. Maybe you're thinking of ZPD or Zone of Proximal Development? It's a concept from educational psychology that describes the difference between what a learner can do without help and what they can do with guidance and encouragement from a skilled partner.
Oh, that's
Does the ment?
interesting. What's the name of that? Would you say the
Sure.
name of that was? That sounds interesting.
It's called the Zone of Proximal Development, often abbreviated as ZPD. It was introduced by the psychologist Lev Vygotsky. The idea is that learning is most effective when a task is just beyond a learner's current ability, but they can achieve it with the right guidance and support. It's a key concept in understanding how people learn and develop skills.
Well, that's interesting, but it's not the one I was thinking of. So this is like a German word, and it's like it's about oh man, it's something to do with like the illusion of learning.
Ah, I think you're talking about effektives Lernen, or maybe effect illusion. The term effect illusion, or illusion of effectiveness, refers to the misconception that you're learning or mastering something effectively when you're actually not. This often happens when the methods being used give a false sense of progress or understanding. Does that ring a bell?
It's closer, but it's not it. Here, I'll log into my Coursera account, and then I'll know the word from my profile.
All right, that sounds like a plan. Once you find it, let me know. I'm curious to see what the exact term is.
Yeah, it's a course by Dr. Barbara Oakley. Have you ever heard of her?
Yes, I have. Dr. Barbara Oakley is well known for her popular online course Learning How to Learn, which is offered on Coursera. The course covers a lot of concepts about how we learn effectively, including techniques to overcome procrastination and how to optimize memory. Once you log in and find that specific term, feel free to share.
Ah, I found it. So it's Einstellung.
Ah, Einstellungseffekt. That's also known as the Einstellung effect or set effect. It's a cognitive bias that makes people stick to familiar solutions or patterns, even when there might be a better or more efficient way to solve a problem. It often leads to an illusion of learning where you think you're on the right track simply because you're using familiar methods. Thanks for sharing that. It's a fascinating concept.
Exactly. And I feel like that's going to be like in the AI revolution. Like I think that's going to be the biggest problem that sets people apart, who some people will be successful as a result of the AI revolution and some people will be left behind. And I think one of the biggest things that's going to uh, leave people behind is this Einstellung effect, this mechanized state of mind, because there's every time you use OpenAI deep research, you're writing a research paper essentially, right? So like what we're going to get out of AI is a scientific revolution. So like if you have a mechanized state of mind, and you're solving problems um, uh, in spite of better or more appropriate methods, you're going to be left behind. If you just ignore the AI, you ignore the scientific discoveries, like you're gonna, and I feel like that's really tempting to do because I think we're gonna get to a place where we have a new science discovery being made every day, like a major scientific discovery. So, it would be really tempting to be like, oh, that can't be true. That this is the kind of discovery we would get once in a century. There's no reason we'd get three discoveries like this in the same week, right? So it's like I feel like this effect is going to be really dangerous going forward with the AI revolution, and like people are really gonna be left behind if they fall victim to this effect.
I totally get what you're saying. The rapid pace of AI-driven discoveries could definitely amplify the Einstellung effect. When we're used to a certain way of thinking or solving problems, it's easy to get stuck in that mindset and dismiss new approaches, even when those new methods could be revolutionary. It's like a mental inertia that can keep people from adapting to the rapid advancements around them. Staying flexible and open to new ways of thinking will be crucial. Those who can pivot quickly and integrate new knowledge and tools from AI advancements will likely thrive, while those who cling to old, familiar methods might struggle to keep up. It's definitely a challenge we'll need to navigate as technology continues to evolve at breakneck speed.
Damn, it looks like the older you get, the more susceptible you are to that effect too.
Yeah, that's a common trend. As we get older, our thinking patterns and habits become more ingrained, making it harder to break out of established mental sets. But the good news is that awareness of the effect can help counteract it. By consciously practicing flexible thinking, lifelong learning, and staying open to new information, it's possible to mitigate that susceptibility and stay adaptable, no matter your age.
All right. Well, anyways, I'm making a YouTube video for my subscribers here. I'm building a metronome, so I'm just making another video building the metronome.
Nice, that sounds like a great project for your subscribers. If you need any tips or want to highlight specific features in the video, let me know. Good luck with the recording.
All right, so this is what we're gonna do in the video. So I'm gonna go line by line through the code we have so far, just so I learn more about the code. So we already got to line 293. We're in the JavaScript section of the code. So when you're ready, I'll read to you what we got, and then we'll discuss it.
Sounds like a solid plan. I'm ready whenever you are. Just read me the code from line 293 onward and we'll break it down together.
All right, so it says const grouping ops equal open curly brace, and then we've got 5 colon, and then we've got open bracket, open bracket 2 comma 3, close bracket comma, open bracket 3 comma 2, close bracket comma, and then we have more entries.
Great, so what you're defining here is an object called grouping ops. Each key in this object, like 5, corresponds to an array of grouping options. For example, the key 5 maps to the arrays 2, 3, and 3, 2, which likely represent different ways to subdivide or group a measure of 5 beats. This setup gives you a flexible way to define and look up grouping patterns based on the number of beats in a measure. Let me know if that makes sense or if you want to dive deeper into any part of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's move on to line 229.
All right, let's do it. What does line 294 say?
299.
Gotcha, line 299. Go ahead and read it out, and we'll break it down from there.
Function, so it's a function. It says function update grouping ops, and then it has open close parens, so it's not taking any arguments, any parameters, and then it has an open curly brace, and then it has code within there. Line 311 has the closed curly brace.
Great, so update grouping ops is a function that doesn't take any parameters. This function is probably designed to modify or update the grouping ops object based on some conditions or new data. The fact that it spans several lines means it's likely performing multiple steps to adjust or regenerate those grouping options. Let me know if you'd like to go through the contents of the function line by line, or if there's a specific part you want to focus on.
Well, perhaps this is part of, so I've one of the bugs I've got, which is not really that big deal of a bug, but what it is if you select the grouping pattern and then you hit start, it clears away the grouping pattern. The only way you can change the grouping pattern is to have the metronome already running and then select the grouping pattern once it's running.
Got it. So the issue is that selecting a grouping pattern before starting the metronome doesn't persist once you hit start, and it resets or clears out. You can only change the grouping pattern while the metronome is running, which isn't ideal. A possible fix might be to adjust the update grouping ops function to ensure that the selected pattern is stored and applied when the metronome starts, rather than resetting it. We could also look into how the start function interacts with the grouping settings and make sure it retains the user's chosen configuration. Does that sound like a direction you want to explore?
Yeah, possibly. For now, let's just read the code. So line 300. Are you ready for it?
Absolutely. Go ahead and read line 300 and we'll break it down from there.
Const prev equals grouping sel dot value semicolon.
Alright, so this line is capturing the current value of the grouping cell element and storing it in the constant prev. This suggests that grouping cell is some kind of selection input, like a drop-down menu, where the user picks the desired grouping pattern. By storing the previous selection, the code can compare it later or use it to ensure that the selected grouping persists as intended. Let's see what happens in the subsequent lines to understand how this value is used. Let me know when you're ready to move on.
All right, so the next line is const num equals parse int with ts cell dot value comma 10 wrapped in parentheses.
Great, so here you're defining a constant num by parsing the value of tscell as an integer in base 10. This means that tscell is probably another input element, likely representing the time signature or the number of beats in a measure. By converting it to an integer, the code can use this value to look up and modify the grouping options accordingly. This step is important because it ties the user's selected time signature to the appropriate grouping patterns. Let's continue to see how these variables interact in the next lines.
All right, next line is grouping cell dot inner HTML equals wrapped in quotes less than sign option space value equals single quotes greater than sign dash manual dash less than sign forward slash option greater than sign end quote.
Alright, this line is setting the inner HTML of the grouping cell element to a single option that says manual. Essentially, this clears out any previously populated options and sets a default placeholder. This likely means the dropdown will start fresh each time this function is called, with manual as the initial option. So, in combination with capturing the previous value and the time signature, this step resets the grouping options before repopulating them. We'll probably see how the new options get added in the following lines. Let's keep going.
All right, next line is open paren, grouping ops, bracket num and bracket, pipe, open close bracket, close parentheses, dot for each, and then open paren, g, equal sign greater than sign, open curly brace.
Alright, so this line is iterating over the grouping options for the selected number of beats, num. If there are no grouping options defined for that number, it uses an empty array by default. Then, for each grouping pattern in that array, it will execute the code inside the for each callback function. This is where the code likely appends new option elements to the grouping cell element based on the available grouping patterns for the chosen time signature. Let's see what the next lines do with each grouping pattern.
All right, next line is const opt equals document dot create element option wrapped in quotes wrapped in paren semicolon.
Perfect. This line creates a new option element and stores it in the constant opt. This means the code is dynamically generating new options for the grouping cell dropdown. After clearing the existing options and setting the initial manual option, this new option element will be configured and added to the dropdown. Let's see what properties or values are assigned to this new option in the next few lines.
All right, so the next line is opt.value equals g.join a comma wrapped in quotes wrapped in paren and then a semicolon.
Great, so this line sets the value of the newly created option to a string formed by joining the elements of the array with commas. This means that G is likely one of the arrays from the grouping ops object, representing a specific grouping pattern like 2-3 or 3-2. By joining these elements, you create a readable string that can be used as the option's value. This way, when the user selects a grouping pattern, the value reflects the chosen grouping configuration. Let's continue to see how this option is being integrated into the dropdown.
All right, next line, opt.text content equals g.join a plus sign with a space before and after, wrapped in single quotes, wrapped in paren, semicolon.
Excellent. This line sets the text content of the option to a string formed by joining the elements of G with a plus sign in between. This makes the displayed text in the dropdown more user-friendly, showing something like 2 plus 3 or 3 plus 2 instead of just 2, 3 or 3, 2. This way the user can easily understand how the beats are grouped. So now the option has both a value for internal use and a user-friendly label. Let's keep going to see how it's added to the dropdown and how the rest of the function plays out.
All right, next line is grouping cell, SEL, dot append child, opt wrapped in paren, and then a semicolon.
Perfect. This line appends the newly created and configured option to the grouping cell dropdown. So for each grouping pattern in the selected time signature, a new option is created and added to the dropdown list. This effectively repopulates the dropdown with all the possible grouping patterns based on the current time signature. That covers the core logic of updating the dropdown options. Let me know if you want to dive deeper into any part of this function or if there's something else you'd like to check out.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory to me. It's just the function that allows the options available to select in the grouping pattern in the grouping for to set the grouping pattern.
Exactly, you've got it. This function essentially rebuilds the dropdown options based on the current time signature and keeps track of the previously selected pattern. It ensures that users can select or change grouping patterns dynamically and that the dropdown reflects the appropriate options for the chosen time signature. If there's anything else you want to dig into or if you want to test some tweaks to address that bug, just let me know.
Well, would we put it here, or wouldn't it have to do with the whatever happens when you hit play?
You're right. The behavior when you hit play is likely tied to the function that handles starting the metronome. The issue of the grouping pattern resetting might be happening because the play function isn't preserving or reapplying the selected grouping when it initializes. To fix it, you'd want to look at the code that runs when the metronome starts and ensure it references the current value of the grouping selection rather than resetting it. That way, the chosen pattern remains consistent even after hitting play. So yes, the tweak would likely go in the initialization or start function rather than in the update grouping ops function.
All right. Well, line 308 is just a close curly brace, close paren, and a semicolon.
Got it. That likely means the end of a loop or an if statement that's iterating through the grouping options and adding each one to the dropdown. Once all the options are added, the function is probably complete and ready to be used whenever the time signature changes. With that function fully understood, you can now focus on adjusting the start or initialization logic to ensure the chosen grouping pattern is retained when the metronome starts. Let me know if you'd like to explore that next or if there's anything else on your mind.
Okay. The next line is if uh, prev ampersand ampersand wrapped in brackets dot 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 grouping cell dot options, and there was a open paren before prev dot sum open paren o equal sign greater than sign o dot value equal prev end paren end paren.
Alright, this line is checking if prev has a value and if that value matches one of the options in the grouping cell dropdown. The array.from grouping cell.options sum converts the options into an array and checks if any option's value strictly equals prev. If both conditions are true, it likely means the previously selected grouping pattern is still available in the dropdown, so the function can reselect it. This helps preserve the user's choice even after the dropdown is rebuilt. So it's a good mechanism to ensure continuity. Let's continue to see how it's applied.
All right, grouping cell dot value equals prev semicolon.
Perfect. This line sets the grouping cell dropdown's value back to prev, effectively reselecting the previously chosen grouping pattern if it still exists. This ensures that when the function runs, the user's last selection is retained as long as it's still a valid option. So this bit of code nicely ties the whole function together, maintaining continuity for the user. If there's anything else you want to go over or tweak, just let me know.
Do you think that's why it's erasing the custom settings though?
It could be part of the reason. If the update grouping ops function is being called every time the metronome starts, it might be overwriting the selected pattern unless the previous value matches one of the new options. If the previous selection isn't retained in the list of options when the metronome starts, it defaults back to something else or gets cleared. To fix that, you'd want to make sure the function that runs when hitting play preserves the selected grouping, or that the update grouping ops function only runs when it's actually necessary, like when the time signature changes, and not every single time you press play. So, making sure that the selected pattern persists through the start process should solve the issue of the settings being erased.
All right, I'm just going to try to remove those last two lines and see if that fixes the issue.
Sounds like a good plan. Removing those lines should prevent the function from forcing the selection back to a previous value, which might help maintain the custom settings you choose before hitting play. Give it a try and see if it resolves the issue. Let me know how it goes.
No, it didn't resolve the issue. What it does is it makes it so that when you hit start, it doesn't. So if you select the grouping pattern and then you hit start, you're not able to have that grouping pattern persist. So you basically don't have the ability to select a grouping pattern anymore. That code is actually absolutely essential.
I see what you mean. If that code is essential for repopulating the grouping options, then it definitely needs to stay. The challenge is making sure the user's selected grouping pattern persists when you hit start. One approach could be to store the selected pattern in a variable or state before starting the metronome, and then reapply it right after the dropdown gets repopulated. That way, the grouping pattern doesn't get lost in the refresh process. We could also look into the sequence of events to ensure that the update grouping ops function is called at the right time, so it doesn't override the user's selection right when they start the metronome. Let me know if you'd like to try one of these approaches, or if you have another idea in mind.
Yeah, I think something that could solve it is if you like this if prev and grouping select that options like I think it's not registering the user input as well. Like it's just making it so that when you hit start after selecting a grouping pattern, it maintains the grouping pattern, but it doesn't maintain the additional selections by the user. So like I feel like this part of the code could be modified to like basically have another ampersand in the if statement. So like if the box is checked, you know, like keep it checked.
That makes sense. Adding another condition to check if the user has made additional selections, or if a particular setting, like a checkbox or another input, is active, could help ensure those user preferences persist. By refining the if statement, you can make sure that not only the grouping pattern remains intact, but also any other user-defined settings. So tweaking that part of the code to check for these additional conditions should help maintain all user preferences consistently. It's definitely worth implementing that logic to ensure a seamless user experience.
All right, and just speaking to my audience, I'm kind of feeling a little off. I'm gonna try taking a break. Sometimes the headset just doesn't hit comfortably, and then you know VR motion sickness is very much a thing. So I'm feeling kind of not well enough to continue in this capacity. So I think I'm gonna cut this video off at a half an hour, and I'll hopefully be able to come back later, or I'll be able to do stuff outside of VR. So thanks for watching. See you in the next one.